Good day, strategy gamers, and welcome back to another episode of our Let's Play series, Next War Poland. In this episode, we're going to be focused on the first strike phase in the advanced sequence of play. So it might be a little shorter. I don't know how long it takes us to go through all of it, but we're going to focus just on that one phase for this episode. And it is one of the most exciting phases, in my opinion, in the advanced sequence of play and the game system. A quick note before we dive into the action, though. I just want to remind everyone that Iran in this series just recently launched, and that is now available through GMT Games, and that's the newest title in the series. But in particular, I also want to make a call out that there are a number of games in this series that are on GMT's P500 pre-order for reprints. So if you're coming in new to the series, I think it's worth pointing out that you can currently place a pre-order for Next War Taiwan, which is a second printing and has a number of updates. I can say that I've been really excited by what I've seen in the playtesting for that game, and Next War Taiwan is my favorite in this series. And you will also find on the website a reprint for Next War India Pakistan that is on P500. And that game is often regarded as one of the best entry games to the series, largely because it does not encompass the strategic map and the naval aspects of the series, and is a very interesting conflict and theater topic as well. So if you are interested in getting in, felt it's worthy giving a shout out to those pre-orders that are now available on the GMT website before anybody misses out on them. You still got time to put them in, but with Iran shipping, it just reminded me that I should make mention of the current state that's out there. Now, I do want to also focus on the strike phase here during this episode. However, normally I go pretty in-depth into all my decision making. Given the breadth of options available to us, I might be a little bit more succinct than I am normally, to everyone's surprise. But I just wanted to say that does not mean that, the strike options that we're going to choose here tonight, that these are necessarily the only available options to us. When it comes to strikes, whether it be through theater weapons such as ballistic or cruise missiles, or airstrikes with airframes, you can attack installations, you can attack ground units, HQs, air defense assets. There's a number of different options available to you. So please keep that in mind, that I'm just trying to choose those that I think will be best for either the defense as the allied player or the offensive nature as the non-allied player. So with that, let's dive into the sequence of play. So we see at the very top here of section 7 for strike phase, we begin with a question around use of nuclear weapons. We will not be using any nuclear weapons, and we are going to skip right down to section B, although that is an interesting component of the series that you should read up on if you get into it. Step B is both players allocate all missile and cruise missile strikes, then resolve non-allied first. So I've got some markers that we're going to use, and these came, I believe, in one of the supplements that's published with the series. I should call that out. So a number of titles exist in the series, but the designer has also come up with a number of supplemental packages, which are not full games, but rather introduce a number of optional additional rules or counter mixes and just really enhancements to further add to the content in the games themselves. But one of the things that came on the supplements are these nice little missile target or cruise missile target counters that we can use to keep track of what we will be trying to hit with each side. Now, the scenario-specific rules also do call out that each player is limited to 2 ballistic strikes per turn and 2 cruise missile strikes per turn. That is pretty important in terms of moderating the usage. Normally, I think it's 5 is the limit that you see in most of the other titles in the series per turn, so this is a little reduced because we have less scope here on the map, of course. And when we look at our general records track, we can see that there are markers tracking how many cruise missiles, how many ballistic missiles we theoretically have in the arsenal available to us. So this is a finite supply that you have to manage through, and you'll get some additionally, dependent upon the scenario. For example, at end of turn scenario, reinforcements and replacements. So these can replenish, but it is a resource that you have to manage closely, because you can go a little crazy and find yourself later in a game with very few theater weapons when you really need them. So the Russians have 6 missile points, 5 cruise missile points. That means they can effectively do 2 missile strikes per game turn and still be just fine. I can't remember if they get any cruise missile replacements, but they can do 2 first turn, 2 second turn, 1 the last turn if you wanted to spread it out that way. However, the Allied player is a little less rich in options here. You see that they have 4 cruise missile, so really you could do 1 a turn and one of the turns do 2, or 2 and 2 and then none, and then they have 6 missile points. So with that, we've got some options on how we distribute these throughout the game turns. We're going to use for both sides, so in the opening phase, their full allotment of 2 of each, and we'll keep track of that here in a moment. We'll start with the non-allied player first, and this is just an allocation. Once they're all allocated, then we'll actually go ahead and resolve these missile strikes. So we've got 2 ballistic missile and 2 cruise missiles available for the non-allied player. The non-allied player is going to send 2 cruise missile strikes against the allied detection air defense track. And really that's an attempt to, again, further degrade the allied player's ability to detect incoming strikes and intercept possibly even the non-allied airframes, which are a little more vulnerable. So they're going to go after the detection track there. And then we have 2 ballistic missile points. We're going to allocate both of them towards targeting the Allied HQ that we've detected and targeted in Grajevo. So I'm going to put them there. Just want to call out, because I'm doing 2 and 2 both on the same targets, that is not a constraint. I'm choosing to allocate 2. I could just as equally only do 1 and send this ballistic missile point somewhere else for the strike. So that's what the non-allied player will do. Now for the allied player, we have to choose what our targets will be. And this is going to be a little interesting here, and you'll see it play out as the strike phase goes. But in the north, with these forces coming kind of towards the center, we detected 2 Russian HQs up there. And headquarters are very valuable in this game for a couple of reasons. They can conduct strikes themselves, actually, but they can also support combat and add to the combat value in the odds determination. So really, in my opinion, is the Allies in this scenario crippling the Russians' HQ ability to support their attacks is pretty important. So we're going to put 2 cruise missiles there against that HQ. And then we will do 2 ballistic missiles against the HQ here at Mariupol. And cruise missiles are a little bit better in terms of where they fall on the resolution chart. They're 1 column further to the right, which is beneficial. This HQ has actually already had a strike marker on it, but this has none. So I would really like to try to have a higher chance of reducing this one in terms of its capability. So cruise missiles went here, ballistic missiles went there. Other tactics that I see often with this scenario and with the theater weapon allocation would be, and this of course is sometimes dependent upon the detection phase as well, but targeting of the air bases is a pretty common tactic to try to inflict damage on the helo, and you can also have collateral damage against the air assets that are in basing. I've also seen pretty regularly attempted attacks against the Allied supply depot, as that is a kind of victory condition. If you destroy that and it comes off map, just to remind everyone, that does count as a victory point in the final calculation, so that's pretty useful. And the other one, of course, would be the ADF track and the various assets on there that you could target. So those are some common areas in this scenario that I see strikes allocated towards in the theater weapon phase. So each side spent their allotment of cruise and ballistic missiles, so now we will keep track of that here on the records track, as it is quite easy to forget to do some of that. So those have now all been exhausted to represent what we're doing here on the board. Now next in the sequence play, after allocation, we actually then immediately go to resolve these strikes, and we begin with the non-allied player first. So we will start here against this HQ, and we will take a look at our advanced strike table. Now, we are using Scud or ballistic missile column here, so this is what we're going to be rolling on. In terms of DRMs, don't believe there are any that are applicable. I'm just doing a quick scan, so I think this will be a flat roll. Sorry, no, we do have one DRM for the fact that we did end up getting the -1 targeted from our SOF phase. So that will give us a -1 DRM on this roll. So we're looking then for a die roll of 7 or less to get strike results here. So we will roll for the first missile. That's a 4. So a 4 becomes a 3, which is a strike 2. So I will get a strike 2 marker. I'm just going to set it to the side for now, and we have to rotate the HQ as it has now lost a combat support ability because of that strike. And now we will roll for the second missile that was allocated. A 2. Ooh. So that becomes a 1. And when we look at this here, again on the missile column, a 1 is a further 2. So interesting thing here, the strike values are cumulative. You can have a strike 1, strike 2, and then strike 3 is an X, you're out. So when there's an X result, or when you accumulate up to 3 in total, which we have now accumulated to 4, that will actually flip the unit to its reduced side. So we are going to flip the unit to its reduced side, and then it actually loses another combat capability as it's taken a further strike. And it does not keep a strike marker on it because it has done the flip. So it does not go 1, 2, 3, and then the fourth is a 1 strike marker. So that has been flipped. So now on its reduced side and does not have the combat support capability. And these 2 missile target markers we will take away. Now we will look over to the ADF track with the cruise missiles. So here, and I'm sorry, I actually forgot to mention one thing there on how we found on this matrix what we're looking at. So we're in this column because our target was in flat terrain. So just you look at the 2 axes and you are a missile in flat. So this is where you're looking. But here we're using cruise missiles, and we are against the air defense track, the ADF track. So that is this row, and then we look at cruise. So we are in the second column, and not as advantageous as you can see. In terms of DRMs, there is a +1 DRM for non-US cruise missile strike. So these are not US cruise missiles, they're the knockoffs, if you will. So that results in a +1. So the non-allied player needs to roll a 2 or less for results here against this ADF track, trying to hit the detection marker. So a 9 is not going to cut it. And for the second one, another 9. Okay. So the non-allied player was a complete bust in their attempts to lower the detection value. Now move to the Allied strikes. We'll start here with these cruise missiles against this HQ. So again, we're going to look at this reference table. We are in flat terrain, and it is a cruise, so we're in the far right column. We don't have the targeting. It's a U.S. cruise missile, so we don't have any negative there. And looking at the map, I'm not seeing any other modifiers. So this is a pretty straightforward roll. That's a 6. A 6 just barely gets us a 1 result. So we will put that strike marker on, and we will rotate to reflect that it is lost capability. And then we will roll one more time here to see what we've got for the second strike. An 8 is no dice, so nothing additional there. Those 2 cruise missiles were exhausted. We'll put that detected marker back on there. We'll now do the 2 ballistic missiles here. And this one already has a strike 1 marker, which might come into play for us. And ballistic, we are in flat, so that second column is the same that the non-allied player was rolling on. Let's see what we get. I don't see any other modifier on the map there either. So a 6 is no result. We'll try one more time here. Ooh, a 1. Okay, so that gets us a 2. So again, good old baseball logic. 1 strike, 2 strike, 3 strikes. He's out with an X result. So we remove the strike marker, and he flips to his other side and is rotated upside down to represent he has no support capability left at this time. And the 2 missile target markers we take off. So the second strike there was a little bit more successful for the allied player in reducing one of those HQs. That does it for step B of the first strike phase. So now we get to step C, which is the non-allied player allocates airstrikes, helicopter strikes, and escorts. So I will say right off the bat, the non-allied player is not going to do any helo strikes, as they will save their helos for combat air support during ground combat. And we have airstrikes as a possibility. I'm not too tempted to do that, though, because, again, the combat air support, we need results on the ground. And the only thing we could really go after would be this HQ, which is on its reduced side, so we have a chance to actually destroy it. So these airframes have a 3 value, this one a 4 for their strike capability. So let's just take a quick look here. So on flat, with a 3 or a 4, this is what the result table looks like. There's also a DRM for pilot skill, so the 3 columns have a -1. So in that case, they would need a 7 or less to get a strike result. But really we would need a 0 to finish off that HQ unless we got 2 cumulative strike markers, which still feels like a bit of a tall order. So we will yeah, you know what, let's go for it. We will attempt to strike that HQ, if nothing else for demonstration purposes. So we will take these 2 Russian, these are Su-25s, and we're going to put them on the map to say that they are allocated here to this strike. And we are also going to give them an escort from the air superiority box. And I think we will have this MiG-29 escort them. So what that does is, if the allied player detects the strike, and if they get an early detection result, it simulates the allied player being able to scramble air assets to intercept the airstrike. the escort would then engage the interceptors. If the interceptors make it through the escort, they can then attack the striking aircraft. Otherwise, the escort may chase off the intercepting air units. So that's the importance of having an air escort. So those are allocated, and unlike the previous step with theater weapons, we do not resolve those immediately. So now we actually go to step D, which is the Allies allocate wild weasel strikes, airstrikes, helicopter strikes. A similar story here. The helos we will save for combat air support during the ground combat to try to negate the non-allied players' helos. And for airstrikes, we will do some airstrikes, and wild weasels also come into play. So we get a wild weasel per scenario rules as a bit of a freebie. So we are going to have that freebie wild weasel go after the detection of the non-allied air defense track. And we will have our other wild weasel from the US basing box go after the SAM value that the non-allied player has. We will also conduct airstrikes. So let's see. So this HQ is reduced. This one is a strike 1. I think what we will do, it's probably going to be overkill. I'm quite certain it will be overkill. But we are going to take our B1B and our B52 here, and we are going to target that HQ. This is really going to be overkill, but I want to make sure we get that thing off the board. And it will be escorted by a German Typhoon. So, escort, hopefully, in case we get detected, can run interference against a possible early detection air intercept by the non-allied player. And that brings us to step E of the strike phase, which is the non-allied player attempts a detection of wild weasel strikes and may detect those that it early detects. So this gets a little tough. The tournament scenario rules specify that this freebie does not have DRMs or can be detected, intercepted, etc. It will go through. I believe, let me just look at that real quick. And the other one, though, certainly I know can be intercepted. Yeah, there is no ADF or interception during that freebie wild weasel. So they're going to go ahead and try to detect the wild weasel strike first. So we're going to look at our advanced table here for advanced detection. Now, the non-allied player has a detection value right now of 6, so they're on the 6th column. And this is a wild weasel mission which gets a +1 DRM, so that's negative to the non-allied player. There's no AWACS advantage for the non-allied, so I don't believe there is any other DRMs here. So they're rolling on the 6th column with a +1, which means they need a 0 or a 1 to intercept the wild weasel, or they need a 5 or better to effectively fire back with SAM air defense systems. So let's see what our roll is. A 9. No dice for the non-allied player. So that gets through. The other also gets through. And the allies now, in step F, resolve wild weasel strikes. So we will do the SAM one first, just because it's first in the batting order. So here we are looking at the air defense row, and it is the wild weasel column. So we're right here kind of in the middle of this strike table. And do not believe we have any DRMs. Oh, sorry, there is a DRM for pilot skill. So A -2 for pilot skill on this one against the SAM. That's AAA track. Yep, I believe that is it. There's a lot to look at here. It's trying to make as few mistakes as possible, but rolling here in the middle column against the SAM with a -2 DRM. Oh, that is delightful. So that is a -2 with the DRM, which is right here, which is an X result. And when we look at the results, because you can't, flip over or kill the SAM battery entirely, you can just lower it on the track. An X against air defense track is a -3. That is fantastic news for the Allied player. So we are going to take this down to the 4. And the Wild Weasel now goes back to the US recovery box. Now, next we get to the free Wild Weasel. There's no DRMs on this one, but we're going to be in the same row column here right in the middle. So let's see what that result is against the detection. A 3 is another good die roll for us. So that is a 1. So the detection value is degraded another spot here. And that I'm just going to keep up here along with that SOF marker to remind ourselves that we get those per tournament scenario rules. That does the Wild Weasel strikes. Now, step G, the non-allied player attempts detection of all other allied strikes, then may attack those it early detects with interceptors. So really that's just this one mission here. Now there are 2 bombers in the mission, but for detection purposes, we're really just rolling once because it's considered one mission, one detection attempt. When we get to the actual strike rolls for the mission, there will be 2 rolls because there are 2 different units that are conducting the strike. But back to the detection, they are now on the column 5, and I don't believe we have any DRMs here. Yep, so just column 5 on the detection table. A 7 is no dice. So that gets through just fine. And we're going to then take the escort off because he is just not needed any longer. And he goes to the NATO flown box. He does not go back to the air superiority box. That leaves us on step H, which is Allies resolve strikes, including any ADF, but there's not ADF in this situation as we were not detected. So we're in a flat hex, and we have a strike value of 6 and 6. We also would not take AAA in these instances because the asterisk means that this is a standoff strike. So it's not like, the B-52 is buzzing the ground like maybe an A-10 would. So there's no AAA return fire on these. But anyways, we're on 6 in flat. That is this third to last column on the right. Again, pilot skill does come into this. Both are at a -2. And I don't see any other DRMs. So we're on this column with a -2 DRM. We'll just roll for the B-52 first, then we'll do the B-1. Yeah, okay, this is such overkill. So a 2 goes to a 0, which is an X, and it is now eliminated. So I'm just going to keep this over here, and I'm going to put it in the eliminated box. It's technically for the SOF forces, but just to keep track of which units have been eliminated during the game, we'll put it there. And the other one, it's pointless to roll for anything because its target has been eliminated. So both of these units, then we move back to the US basing recovery box and we will have to roll to try to get them back to be ready for other strike missions in future turns. That's a big win for the allied player, though, because that HQ could normally, if it were uninterrupted, provide a combat strength 5 modifier in odds determination for combats twice per turn, or it could conduct strikes, which would also be valuable. So that's pretty significant getting that off the board. Next, we have the step I, which is the Allies attempting detection of non-allied strikes. Same situation was non-allies did. We're going to try to detect this mission here. We have a value of 5. So we are going to roll on the detection track, and we have no DRMs for this roll. So on the 5 detection table. A 1. Gotta tell you, the allied player is rolling hot tonight. So on the 5, a 1 is early detection. I'm glad we saw this result because this is going to be fun. So radars go blasting off in NATO HQ that there's an incoming airstrike, and they're going to scramble British Typhoons to intercept. And they will also, this is normally very risky, but we're going to try it because the chance to destroy these 2 bombers is probably worth the trade-off. We're also going to scramble this reduced Polish F-16. So it's a little bit of a weaker unit, but we have some opportunistic targets for it to possibly go after here on the board. So what we do now is we actually resolve air combat, similar to what we did in the previous video. And here we're going to be looking at the Typhoons getting to fire long range first because of those 2 asterisks against the MiG-29. Because the Polish F-16 is with us, we really do want to try to force the escort off as soon as we possibly can. And until it's gone, we cannot attack the striking bombers there. So we are a strength 4, or capability 4, they are a 4. So that is going to put us on the 0 column with no DRMs. So we need a good roll here to make sure that this is little bad news bears for the non-allied player. What a roll once again. This is feeling a little rigged, but you're watching me roll it. We're on the 0 column. A 0 result is a DA. So that unit becomes damaged and aborted. Oh, sorry. I think it's still damaged and aborted. They're damaged, step loss, and aborted. That was for paradrop and such, but same result. So we flip it over, and it is now going to go to the Russian aborted box here. Russians have a lot of air units in the aborted box. Now we get to conduct more advanced air combat, except we're actually doing it against the 2 bomber units. I'm just going to reposition these a little so we'll line it up. So we'll just do these one at a time. The British Typhoon will go first, and this is standoff. And it is a 4 to a 1, so that will be on the +3 column here. And no DRMs. So +3 column British Typhoon against the Su-25. 4 feels decent, but maybe not good enough for a kill. +3 of 4 is damaged and aborted. We'll actually take that. That's not too bad. So this will also go to the Russian aborted box. Now the slightly clipped Polish F-16 that's been reduced is going to attack the other Su-25. This will only be on the +1 column though, and no DRM. So let's see what we get here. A 2. Sorry, this got a little out of frame. Those results are just incredible. I can't believe I'm not getting those dice results in actual opposed play though. So a +1 2 is again damaged and aborted. So the Allies have completely intercepted and prevented the Russian airstrike against the Polish HQ, which is a great victory for them. This day will be remembered, and songs will be sung in pubs across Western Europe. We're now on to Step J, non-allied resolve strikes, including ADF. Well, too bad, non-allied player, you have lost all your strike aircraft. Naval bombardment, we clearly don't have. As you can see, the map does not have naval assets. We roll for collateral damage. There was none. This is something that would normally come up if you were to have struck a airbase, because it's simulating that the strike on the airbase, likely there would have been hangars or assets of some kind that supported the air units that are represented here in the game, and you roll to see if any of them are damaged. But we don't have that in this situation. Now we go through and alternate HQ strikes one at a time, non-allied first. So I don't think we're going to do any HQ strikes, because the Russians, one, have already lost an HQ, so they're a little down in the dirt about that. And they're going to save this HQ and this over here for combat support when we actually get to that, because I think it'll be more valuable in the odds determination phase of getting a beneficial result. And for the allied player, their closest HQ is back here, and it is out of range of these Russian units. Well, I guess it's in range there, but we're not going to conduct a strike because it's a similar... Actually, we can't conduct a strike, excuse me. It's already been rotated, so it's been exhausted. So there are no HQ strikes that we will be doing. Artillery strikes, it's kind of a similar story where the Allies have none. For the Russians, they're not out of range, but again, I'd rather use artillery when we get to the combat resolution. I think it's more impactful there at this stage in the game. And we can do aerial mining. Well, we don't need to do aerial mining here. So that concludes Next War Poland tournament scenario first strike phase of game turn 1. It was an absolute blast going through that with all of you. Hoping I didn't miss too many things. If I did, please leave them in the comments, and I'll try to make sure we get them called out in future episodes. But really appreciate all the continued support of the videos and the channel. And again, if you have an interest in this game, please do give it a try. It is certainly up there in the list of my favorites, and there are good titles that are currently available or will be available in the future. And should you have questions about those two, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, hoping all of you have yourselves an excellent day. Bye now.